The lighthouse at the head of Bass Harbor is recognizable worldwide. Reproduced on millions of postcards, the White Tower with its black lantern sits high atop pink granite cliffs over sunset waters. While Bass Harbor Headlight is certainly famous, few people know of its horrifying past or its history of ghostly visitations. The lighthouse has been the setting for murder, vengeful ghosts, and a former curse that once led to injury and even death. Bass Harbor Headlight is certainly a study in contradictions. Well known yet poorly understood, beautiful yet damned, the landmark stands for supernatural encounters that are truly strange and dangerous. The grounds of the lighthouse are open year-round from 9 a.m. to sunset, which is spectacular on this side of Mount Desert Island. From the very tip of Bass Harbor Head, 56 feet above high tide, the lighthouse looks out over the open sea and the islands in the Gulf of Maine. As the only lighthouse on Mount Desert Island, the place is very popular, averaging thousands of visitors a day during the summer. Out of respect for the privacy of Coast Guard officials living there, visitors are not allowed into the lighthouse, the attached keeper's house, or on the land immediately around these structures. Yet the trip is well worth making for both the breathtaking scenery and the possibility of supernatural encounters. Blood baptized the building of Bass Harbor Headlight, leading to a curse that lasted more than a century. Construction on the brick tower and attached wood frame keeper's house began in 1858. A certain number of men began working on the structure, and when they were finished, one man was missing. A search turned up an axe covered in blood lying on the rocks outside, yet the missing man was never found or heard from again. A rumor soon began that he had been sealed into the structure of the lighthouse, particularly around the base of the cylindrical tower. There are a number of dead air spaces that could conceal a body. Renovations over the years have focused on the keeper's house, leaving the brick lighthouse untouched. Without a doubt, the killer must have premeditated the crime, working side by side with his intended victim all summer long in 1858. Having selected a place to conceal the body, the killer then seized on his last chance to carry out the bloody deed. From its construction until the day of its automation in 1974, Bass Harbor Headlight has been bad luck. Among the keepers who lived at the station, an extraordinary number of these people experienced personal tragedies. Phoebe Gray was the wife of one of the early lighthouse keepers. She died of a heart attack while living at the light. Charles Gillis, another keeper, died there in 1872, and later keeper Eugene Coleman suffered a terrible stroke. Willis Dolliver came to work at the lighthouse in 1894, never dreaming that his wife Barbara would leave the station in a casket. The wife of Elmer Reed also died while living at the Bass Harbor Headlight in the late 1930s. The old lighthouse became notorious for a deathly atmosphere thought to bring on disease and accidents. While June Noyes was living there, she contracted typhoid fever, but fortunately, she left in time and survived. Shirley Archelaus was not so fortunate. She grew deathly ill when she came to live at the lighthouse, and she was so weak when she eventually left that she died soon afterwards. Leverett Stanley, one of the last civilian keepers, worked at the light from 1940 to 1950. While he was on a ladder repairing the structure, he took a debilitating fall. His wife Albra had already succumbed to a crippling disease, so that she could only walk about with the help of crutches. The two could barely leave the place they had come in to health and strength. Including the suspected murder that took place during the construction in 1858, 6 people lost their lives in connection with Bass Harbor Light, while 4 more suffered devastating diseases or accidents. If the spirit of the man entombed in the building was somehow responsible for the illness and death, then what was his motive? One possibility is that he desired to inflict his terrible fate upon lighthouse keepers. The murdered man met his own end with the unexpected blow of an axe, and then, as legend has it, the killer sealed the body into the structure of the lighthouse. Immured behind bricks and mortar, the vengeful spirit could not wall up a living person, but the phantom might somehow bring about death of that person's beloved partner. In this way, each widowed lighthouse keeper fell victim to solitary confinement out on Bass Harbor Head. Certainly, isolation was extreme at the lighthouse, even in the best of times. Surrounded by thousands of acres of fir trees, the beacon was only accessible in the old days by poor roads and a difficult landing. Death drastically intensified this loneliness. Over and over again, the lighthouse keepers buried their spouses and returned alone to the outpost. For some of these individuals, life at Bass Harbor Headlight became a living hell. In a real sense, they felt buried alive, trapped inside the lighthouse that depended on their constant care. Perhaps the specter's true intent was broader in scope, for the terrible curse ended only when the lighthouse became automated. Morton Dyer was the last civilian lighthouse keeper when he retired in 1957, but the lighthouse still depended on the care of a living keeper. Members of the United States Coast Guard lived at the station with their families and manned the light. But in 1974, the lighthouse became fully automated. Since then, Coast Guard families living there had been spared the deathly legacy of the place. This circumstance suggests that the Phantom's real target was the safety of the ships that relied on the living keepers of the light to guide them safely into Blue Hill Bay. Through death and psychological torment inflicted upon the lighthouse keepers, the Spectre jeopardized their sacred duty to keep the lantern burning. While this evil spirit remains cloaked in mystery, his reign of terror has finally come to a close. However, strange sightings still take place at the old lighthouse. Many people have seen a shadowy woman in a rocking chair. She appears in one of the windows of the keeper's house, accompanied by a feeling of doom. This spirit remains a prisoner in the place that killed her. Other people have witnessed an apparition in the snow, an old man sitting on a stump during a snowstorm. Whenever anyone approaches the old man, he disappears, leaving no tracks in the snow. Local legend maintains that this is the spirit of Keeper Charles Gillis. But the mystery deepens. Some accounts describe a strange doorway to realms of supernatural. One man saw a deer in a snowstorm that behaved in exactly the same manner as the apparition of the old man, disappearing in the blink of an eye and leaving no tracks in the freshly fallen snow. Also inexplicable are the strange sounds that people have heard over the years in the area. If such a passageway exists to other dimensions, then it's anyone's guess as to the true extent of the ghostly happenings at Bass Harbor Headlight. The spirits of people who died in the lighthouse are perhaps far outnumbered by other strange entities that appear and disappear in the remote location. Bass Harbor Headlight remains baffling as well as terrifying in terms of its paranormal past and dangerous scope of its ghostly encounters. Perched above the waters of the Gulf of Maine, the lighthouse is one of few coastal stations still in operation in the United States. While the legacy of death has ended here, supernatural history lives on at the strange outpost. Hey guys, Reaper here. I just wanted to thank you all for either watching or listening, whether you're on YouTube or Spotify. This story was brought to you from Ghosts of Acadia, written by Marcus Labrizzi and published by Down East Books. I wanted to give both of them a huge thank you and a huge shout out for letting me bring this book to you guys, whether it's in audio form on Spotify or in video form on YouTube. If you want to check out the book for yourself, I will leave a link down below in the description in both Spotify and on YouTube, so you can go check out the book for yourself and support the original author and original publisher. New story coming out tomorrow night. And until then, remember, sleep well, my friends.